Hello and welcome to the crowd control preview. At the start of the article, it tells a story of Jay Wilson playing his barbarian. Jay didn't like how his barbarian's crowd control skills became less effective as the difficulty increased. In fact, in Hell and Inferno difficulty, his crowd control skills are reduced by 65%. The developers at Blizzard believed they could do something better, but they were concentrating on other features like the Paragon systems before looking at this. The article goes into specifics on why this needed to be done. Unfortunately, this drove players to damage mitigating skills like Spirit Walk, Ignore Pain, and Diamond Skin. That is because their effectivity is not reduced at higher difficulty levels. So as the game goes on, crowd control skills are discarded for damage mitigating skills. Blizzard does not like this inequity and wants to have alternatives for the next patch. The first idea was to only reduce crowd control duration in multiplayer games. This would make crowd control powerful in single player games and weak in multiplayer games. Unfortunately, the negative side effect of this is that it could drive more players to solo games rather than playing with other people. The second idea is to make crowd control shorter at the beginning of the game, which is level 1. Then they would not need to reduce the duration of the effect at higher difficulty levels. The problem with this is that you're not giving players any incentive to actually use the skill over a damage mitigating skill. Most people would think that crowd control got nerfed and they would just stick with damage mitigating skills. Idea number 3 was to implement a diminishing return mechanic, kind of like what's in World of Warcraft. The first crowd control will last for its full duration, but each subsequent crowd control will be reduced by a percentage until the monster is immune. Blizzard concluded that this type of game mechanic does not fit well in an action MMO, as it requires much more coordination and micromanagement in multiplayer games to make this effective. The developers at Blizzard did not like any of these ideas, so they had a brainstorming session and came up with a new twist on the diminishing returns mechanic. Here is how the system will work. Each monster will have its own resistance meter. The resistance meter will start at 0%, and for every second a crowd control is applied, the monster will gain 10% crowd control resistance. For every second the monster is not crowd controlled, it will lose 10% resistance. Each difficulty level will have its own resistance cap, the max being 65% for Hell and for Inferno difficulty. From this system, chain stunning will still be possible, but it will reduce in crowd control effectiveness very quickly. You will not see a immune message from diminishing returns. The maximum resistance cap is the same as the current resistance cap. In multiplayer games, micromanagement will not be necessary. And lastly, in solo player games, players will most likely get the full duration of their crowd controls. The last part of the article provides a few examples for how this new system is going to work. Example number 1. A wizard casts Frost Nova, which lasts for 3 seconds. This gives the monster a 30% crowd control resistance. Right after Frost Nova wears off, a Witch Doctor casts Horrify, which lasts for 4 seconds. Because the monster already has 30% resistance, the actual duration of the crowd control is only for 2.8 seconds. At this point, the monster will now have 58% crowd control resistance. If the monster is not crowd controlled again for another 5 seconds, that means the monster will only have 8% resistance left over. At this point, if a monk uses Blinding Flash, which lasts for 3 seconds, 8% crowd control resistance will be applied, and the actual duration would be 2.76 seconds. Example number 2. A monk is playing in Nightmare difficulty, which has a max resistance cap of 50%. The monk uses 7-sided strike for a duration of 7 seconds. This should give the monster 70% crowd control resistance, but it does not since Nightmare caps at 50%. If a second stun were to hit the monster right after the first stun and it was also 7 seconds, the 50% resistance would apply to the second stun, which in effect would make it 3.5 seconds. This in effect would be shorter than the initial 7-second stun, so basically the second stun will have no effect on the monster. Example number 3 shows that there's actually 2 calculation meters that are going on at the same time. The first calculation is to calculate the crowd control duration. The second calculation calculates the amount of time it would take for the resistance to go away or to get to 0% again. The reason why there is 2 calculations is because the first calculation has a cap limit, which we've already discussed. In Hell and Inferno difficulty, it would be capped at 65%. The second one, however, does not have a cap. What this basically means is that the more chain stunning you do, the longer it will take for the monster to get back to 0% resistance. Example number 4 shows that when you are chain stunning, the order of the stuns does not matter. In the last paragraph of the article, Blizzard is hoping that this will make it into the 1.0.5 patch. With all that being said, here are my opinions on this article. Why would anybody care about these changes? Damage mitigation skills right now are very effective. Even with these changes, I don't see a reason why anybody would want to move to a more complicated mechanic. There is also the fact that most crowd control skills are area based, so it's possible to just completely miss, whereas damage mitigation is usually on your character or on yourself, so there is no need to aim or to be precise when you use that skill. For organized multiplayer games, this will probably be a very good change for them, but I have a feeling that these groups don't really need any more help. Lastly, there is a good chance that the majority of the population might not even read up on these changes. That is it for today's news. Thank you for your time, and to my subscribers, thank you for your support.